want to welcome everyone to the Cloud Security Bootcamp. So it's actually a bootcamp where we are trying to build the next generation of cloud security soldiers. And we have our group of organizers and we have our group of mentors. And this training is actually to get us job ready and to get us strong in the cloud security world. And today I'm going to be the one taking the section and I remain my humble self, Oyimafu Emmanuel, a Microsoft certified trainer, a technical architect, M365 Azure, and cloud security. I have some certifications. Don't let my certifications overwhelm you. It's just little. I believe one day all of you here will even have more certifications than this. But I'm just putting it here to motivate us because I started from zero. Like I don't have any certifications when I started. I don't even have anything, just like the way we all are here now today. And I know by the grace of God, many people will even exceed this. Like a lot of people will be better and will even do more than me. So that's just me. I'm a technical architect and I'm an N365 and a cloud security engineer. Yeah. So today we are going to be talking about plan, implement, and administer conditional access policy. So this training is based on identity and access management. In identity and access management, conditional access policy is very important because if you don't plan conditional access policy very well, you can lock yourself out. I remember when I started my internship then at Hashem Limited. So we're doing a project and they told us to like do we were shared into different groups. So I was in the identity side and the cloud computing side. So I was part of the people that set up the Entra ID environment, created the users, and also assigned permissions to users, multi-factor authentication and the likes. So in the second team, somebody there had to do a lot. At the end of the day, he locked everybody out, even himself. He could not sign into the tenant again. And that was towards the last days that was close to the defense. Everybody was locked out. They have to start afresh and start again. Because when they reach out to Microsoft, for you to for you to like maybe reset your password back, or for Microsoft to allow you to log into your tenant that you have lost access to, it's not immediately. It might take like maybe one day or maybe like some hours. So they have to create a new tenant immediately. Why? Because they did not plan the conditional access very well. So because they did not plan the conditional access very well, they had to lock themselves out. So everybody was locked out completely. So in that case, that is why planning conditional access policy is very important. So we are going to be going to the next slide. So let's look at our objectives for today. So part of our objectives for today is we are I believe the other time Chinke was teaching, he made mention of security default. And I believe most people here will understand what security default is. And we are going to be looking at planned conditional access policy. So here we are going to see how we can plan conditional access policy. And we are going to see how we can implement conditional access policy controls and assignments, whereby we can target specific applications and we can see all the conditions that we can apply using conditional access policy. And aside that, we are going to test and troubleshoot conditional access policy. And we are going to implement application control and section management. Then we will now see what continuous access evaluation is in conditional access policy. We are going to start with the first learning part, which is security default. So I'm going to explain what security default is. So basically, if you go to Microsoft Entra ID and you go to the properties page, you are going to see security default here. So from the right up here, security defaults are basic identity security mechanisms recommended by Microsoft. When enabled, this recommendation will be automatically enforced in your organization. Administrators and users will be better protected from common identity-related attacks. So security default is just like a way of enforcing multi-factor authentication. Security default is actually important or useful. Maybe when the organization doesn't have Entra ID premium license, either P1 or P2, or when an organization don't want to use conditional access policy, you can use security default to enforce multi-factor authentication, and you can also use conditional access policy to enforce multi-factor authentication. So basically, if you want to view the settings for security defaults, if you go to the overview page when you log into Entra ID, once you scroll down, you will see the settings for security default, and you can decide to turn it off or turn it on. But let's note that turning on security default means that MFA will automatically be applied to all users in your organization. Everybody will actually inherit that MFA. It can be a problem because you can't exempt anybody. So we are going to look at some options there. So if we look at who is security default for and who shouldn't use security default. So for who should use security default? Organization that want to increase their security posture but don't know how or where to start. So any organization that wants to increase their security posture and they don't know where to start, they can use security default, because automatically by enforcing security default, every user in your organization automatically gets enrolled to multi-factor authentication by default. And other people that should use security default are organizations utilizing the free tier of Microsoft Entra ID. Some of us that in our lab, we're using Business Basic. So if you're using Business Basic, you don't have Microsoft Entra Premium license, either P1 or P2, then your best match is security default. So you can see who should use security default. Organization utilizing free tier of Microsoft Entra ID. Then let's see the next part here, which is who shouldn't use security default. One, organization using conditional access policy to bring signals together. So any organization that is currently using conditional access policy, there's no need to use security default. And you can't use conditional access policy and security default at the same time. I remembered when I got into a project, so I wanted to create conditional access policy. So by the time I created the conditional access policy, I wanted to turn it on. Then in the process of turning it on, I got an error that you must first of all disable security default. If you don't disable security default, you cannot turn on conditional access policy. So what is that trying to tell us? You can't use security default and conditional access policy at the same time. You have to use one. Both of them are doing the same thing, but conditional access policy gives you more control and more granularity than security default, which we are going to look at. Organizations with Microsoft Entra ID Premium license. So if you are using Microsoft Entra ID Premium license, then you can use conditional access policy. You don't need to use security default. Security default are for organizations that are utilizing free tier of Microsoft Entra ID. Maybe for instance, you're on a call, on a consulting call, a client can ask you, when should I use conditional access policy? When should I use security default? If the organization are having maybe Microsoft Entra ID premium license, then your recommendation to them should be they should use conditional access policy. But if you have done your evaluation and you discover that the organization don't have any Entra ID premium license, then security default will be good for them at that point in time. So the next is organization with complex security requirements that warrant using conditional access policy. So unlike security default, conditional access policy gives you more control, and you can use a lot of conditions to prevent or grant access, which we are going to be looking at as we continue in this section. Yeah. So we have a lab. So let me just quickly go to Microsoft Entra ID so I can show us this, how to enable conditional access policy. So we'll just be doing the lab as we proceed. So let me just quickly share my screen on my browser. Let me just use incognito. So I'll be moving the browser to this side of the screen. So I can just show us how to enable conditional access policy. So I'll just go to, let me go to office.com. So anytime I want to go to admin center, I always like using office.com. But if you like, you can just go to admin.microsoft.com, or you can go to entra.microsoft.com so that you can just sign into Entra ID directly. So I'll just increase the size of the screen. So now that I'm in office.com, from office.com, I can as well go to the admin center. So if I click on all apps now, let me check all apps, because Microsoft is changing everything every day. So every day Microsoft keeps changing how their portal looks like and how everything works. So that is why we need to be up to date to everything that Microsoft is actually doing as engineers. So we can just go directly. Let's go to entra.microsoft.com. So it will ask me for multi-factor authentication. So I will just provide my authentication here. Okay. So while it loads, so this is Entra ID portal. So how did I access Entra ID portal? So I just came to entra.microsoft.com. Formally, if you come to office.com, you will see admin here. So once you see admin and you click on admin, it automatically takes you to the admin center. But from here now, everything has changed. You can see purview, you can see security. So from here, you can just go to the admin center directly, like admin is here. So if I click on admin here now, it automatically takes me to Microsoft 365 admin center. But formally, you will see admin here. But now, for you to see admin, you need to click on apps. Then from apps, you now go to admin here. So this admin center now is Microsoft 365 admin center. From this admin center, you can navigate to any admin center. Like if you click on show all here, you will see all the admin centers: security, Microsoft Purview, Microsoft Intune, identity, Azure, Exchange, SharePoint, Teams, and Power Platform. Then if you click on all admin centers, you will now even see other admin centers that are not on this list, like Viva Engage and Search Intelligence. But the one we are concerned about is Entra. So we'll just click on Entra. So it's still the same thing as going to entra.microsoft.com. So you can also try that. But if you are in a hurry and you just want to go to Entra Admin Center, so the best is just go to the website directly. So let me close this tab. So this is my tenant. So if you want to view the settings for security default from Entra ID page here, you click on overview. Once you click on overview, it shows you the first tab. So the first tab is actually the overview, where you see the name of the organization, the tenant ID, the primary domain, the license that you're using, your groups, your users, your devices, and all. Then if you come to monitoring, you will now see the basic sign-in logs of your organization. You can see from November 19 to November 20, authentication was not really happening. But from here now, you can see total sign-ins. You can see total sign-ins. Everything dropped then till today. If you come to properties, this is where you will now see security defaults. So from this property here, you can also change the name of the tenant. If, for instance, maybe another company buys this tenant and the name is maybe precise markets, no online, and I want to remove online, and I can as well change it if I like. So the tenant or country region, after creating the tenant, you can't change it. You can see here, you can't change it. Then for language, for notification language, you can change to other language if you don't want to use English. So that's just it. Then if you come down now, this is where you can now see the settings for security default. Because I have turned off security default, that is why we didn't see that gear icon to turn it on or turn it off. Here now we can see your organization is currently using conditional access policy, which prevents you from enabling security default. That means before I can enable security default, I need to first of all go and turn off all the conditional access policy. If possible, delete all the conditional access policy in my environment to be able to turn off security default. So this is just how to turn on security default. If your organization, if your tenant is actually a new tenant that you just provision, security default is turned on by default. If you want to use conditional access policy, you can now go and turn off security default by yourself. to use conditional access policy, because if you don't turn off security default and you create conditional access, you can create conditional access policy, but you can't turn it on. You can't turn on the conditional access policy until you turn off security default. So we'll continue. So if you have any question, you can ask before we go. Anybody with any question? Let me check the chat. Okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So no question on the chat. But if you have any question, you can just unmute your mic and ask your question. So let's go back to the slide. So this is how to turn on security default. So let me go over it again. If I close this Microsoft Entra ID page and I come to M365 Admin Center and I go to identity, from identity, I'm going to see Microsoft Entra ID, both user settings, group settings, and all. But my major concern here is the overview page. Automatically, it brings me to the overview page, but you can as well click on it again. Then from the overview page, you go to properties. So once you go to properties, you will now see the options to actually turn off security default. But because I have turned it off before and I'm not using conditional access policy, I cannot turn it on. So before I can turn on security default, I need to turn off conditional access policy. Yeah. So let me go back to the slide and continue. So now the next we are looking at is plan conditional access policy. So about conditional access policy, let's see conditional access policy like this. How I like explaining conditional access policy is that conditional access policy works with signals. You can use various signals to grant access to a user. You can use the user location as a signal. You can use the device that the user is signing into as a signal. You can use the real-time risk as a signal, either user risk or sign-in risk. And you can use the applications that the person is signing into as a signal. So let's use example of user and location as a signal. Let's say, for instance, in my organization, I know that all my workers are in Nigeria. I don't have any worker working from India. So I can go to Microsoft Entra ID and create what we call allowed location. So if I create allowed location, I can go and create a conditional access policy that anybody that is trying to sign in from all location, excluding this allowed location, the person should be blocked. And if it is only Nigeria that is the allowed location there, if for instance, Femi wanted to travel to UK, he did not tell the management, he just traveled. He did not tell anybody. Once Femi gets to UK, he will not be able to sign in because UK is not part of our allowed location. So that is how you can use signals. So location is like a signal that you can use to grant access. So if you are creating that conditional access policy now, and the conditional access policy is based on location, that you can create a policy that if anybody is not in this particular allowed location, block access. So here now, if you are using location, maybe Femi is in UK and the only allowed location in Nigeria, and the person and Femi want to access the company resources or want to access his mailbox or email or Teams, I can say block access. I can just decide to block Femi directly because he's not in Nigeria again. He's signing in from UK, and UK is not part of our allowed location. So conditional access policies works with signals. So another signal again is devices. So you can use devices. You can see if somebody is trying to sign in from, okay, you can ask your question, David Adama. Yeah.
All right. I dropped it in the chat already. I just wanted to find out if security default can be termed as condition as baseline configurations. Yeah, that's the question.
Okay, baseline configurations. It can be termed baseline configuration. It's just more or less like Microsoft did it because they know that there are some organizations that when they are setting up their tenants, they may not have an administrator that will manage their environment. So they just turned on security default to protect them. Just like if you want to see maybe Microsoft baselines for security, their baseline recommend conditional access policy. They recommend conditional access policy. So security default is just there, should in case probably maybe the organization is still thinking or planning to use conditional access policy. So it should just be there so that by default, everybody should be forced to use, everybody will be forced to use MFA. So that's just it. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay.
You did. Thank you.
So Baba Femi, you can ask your question.
Okay, thank you. My question is talking about user and location. So in a situation whereby the scenario you painted, like all your workers and your users are in Nigeria and someone in the UK is trying to access. So what if the person is using a virtual private network?
If the person is using if the person is using a virtual private network and the
Yes.
VPN is pointing to Nigeria, the person will be able
Yes.
to work. He will be able to work. He will be able to work.
So what if the person is a threat actor? There's no.
The
Is
person.
there any way you can identify such person as a threat actor and quickly do something about it?
So this is how to fight that. The what you just said is actually a very valid point, and that's what actually made some organizations. So just like we have named location, you can also create allowed network. So there are some organizations that the IP of their VPN is in their Entra ID. So they have allowed those IPs. So if, for instance, you are using a third-party VPN and the VPN is configured to use Nigeria as a location, it won't allow that person to have access. So most people are able to, maybe because they are traveling to UK, they don't want to tell their manager. They just want to go like that. They still gain access because the company have not used strict location policy. Because there are some organizations that they use VPN by default. They use VPN. So if you want to work, you must connect to VPN. If you don't connect to VPN, you can't work for them. So in that case, even if you try to use another VPN that is in that location, configured for that location, it won't work because the VPN IP range will be different from the one your organization is using. So that's just the way to bypass that. But if the organization is just using allowed location without network, without like specifying a particular network that traffic should that should allow traffic or users should be able to log in from. In that case, if the person traveled to UK and the person used a VPN configured to be used in Nigeria, the person will still work. So that's just it. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. So that's why we are in this training. And we are trying to empower every one of us so that at least when we get to those organizations and maybe they are doing named location, we can tell them that, okay, if you do named location, somebody can as well use VPN to still bypass your security. Then that we can now say, okay, let's do allowed network so that if the person is not in this particular network, the person will not be able to work or do anything. So that's just for that one. So the next option now is devices. So the way you can use devices is if maybe your devices are enrolled to Entra ID and they are being managed by Intune. So you can say any device that is not compliant, the person should not be able to work. Just like the question Baba Femi asked. So an organization that is using user and location and they are not using device compliance, maybe for instance, it's an hacker that wants to sign into maybe Femi's laptop from UK. If the device is not compliant, the person will not be able to authenticate. So that's just it. So that is why most times, if you go to a standard enterprise organization, their conditional access policy, if you see their conditional access policy, you'll be like, there's conditional access policy for user risks, there's conditional access policy for signing risks, there's conditional access policy for device compliance, there's conditional access policy for applications, there's conditional access policy for locations, there's conditional access policy for network. So no matter what the person wants to try, it won't work. So that's just the essence of this training, so that we can equip ourselves. Then the next one you can use is risk time conditional access policy. So when we say real time risk, we have user risk, we have sign-in risk. So sign-in risk is more or less like when somebody is trying to sign in and there is high tendency that the account has been compromised. So in that case, block access. So conditional access policy works with signals. One way the application can work. You can see, okay, if somebody is trying to sign into Exchange Online, anytime somebody is trying to sign into Exchange Online application, require MFA. You can say anytime somebody is trying to sign into SharePoint, require MFA. So these are signals that you can use to verify access, to either allow or block. So most times, some organizations can say, okay, if somebody tries to sign into Exchange Online, require MFA. If somebody is trying to sign into OneDrive, require MFA. That is for application base. Then for risks, for real-time risks, if somebody is trying to sign in and the user account is on user risk, block access. Block access. So that's the ways you can use conditional access policy. But security default, you can't actually do all this in security default. Security default, you can't make for security default, you can't make controls like this in such a way that you can maybe use location, devices, or applications. You can't do that. So that's one advantage of conditional access policy. So if somebody wants to have access to your apps and your data, you can use different signals to grant them access. Example of those signals are user and location, devices, real-time risks, and application. So somebody is asking a question, who can turn off security default? Is it only global administrators that can do that? Global administrator is the only person that can turn off security default. But you can check. You can also check. But it's only global administrator that can turn off security default. But you can also check to confirm in case maybe there is a recent changes or developments as of today. So benefit of conditional access policy. Conditional access policy can increase productivity and it can help you manage risk. It can help you address compliance and governance issue, and it can help you manage costs and enforce zero trust. Part of the zero trust principles is verify explicitly. So we can see how conditional access policy can enable you to use different signals to verify a user. If that user is actually the user that is trying to sign in or is another person that's trying to sign in as that user. So conditional access policy helps enforce zero trust, it helps manage costs, and it helps address compliance and governance standards, and it helps you manage risk, and it also increase productivity. So these are the benefits of conditional access policy. So basically, if we talked about planning, because this part of the section is talking about planning. So if you want to plan conditional access policy, most times you need to, the first thing you need to know is, if you're in an organization, you need to find out the locations of all their staffs. Because for real, you need to have allowed location. Then you need to find out from their network team, what is their IP range, so that you can even enforce conditions based on their IP location. And also, as an enterprise administrator, if their devices are actually enrolled to Intune, you can allow access to only compliance devices that are compliant. So any device that is not compliant, deny access. So this is how you can plan. You can use these signals to plan your conditional access policy. So there are some organizations that they have some sensitive applications that is very crucial to them. So if you know those applications, then you can now say, okay, if somebody is trying to sign into the applications, require MFA. If you don't require MFA for other applications, but that particular application, you have to require MFA for that application. So that is where planning comes in setting up conditional access policy. You need to plan using all these signals. It's all these signals that will enable you to plan, whether to enable proper protection in your environment. So let's just continue. So now the next we're looking at is implementing conditional access policy and assignment. So we're going to look at how we can implement conditional access policy and how we can assign conditional access policy. Here now, we can see this is more or less like Entra ID. So if you go to Entra ID and you search for conditional access policy, if you come to policies, the next thing you click on is you click on new or create new policy. Once you click on create new policy, this is the page you will see if you are setting up conditional access policy. So this particular side is talking about user assignment. So best practice, if you are applying conditional access policy, it is not good you apply the policy to everybody in the organization. At least you should exclude what we call the break glass account. The break glass account is the default administrator of the tenant, so that even if everybody gets locked out, at least one person will still have access to sign in and amend any mistake that has happened. So that's just for assignment. So you can assign policy to users, you can assign policy to groups, you can even assign policy to roles. We can see here, if you want to target resources, just like we're saying that if somebody wants to sign into, you want to give access based on application. So if you want to give access based on application, you can come here under target resource. You select, if you want to target all apps, that means you click on all apps. But if you want to target selected apps, that means you click on select apps. So once you click on select apps and you click on the select button here, you can select the apps that you want to apply conditional access policy to. But here, we are selecting just Office 365, meaning that if you say, if somebody wants to access Office 365, you can say require MFA. That's just one thing you can do. You can require MFA, or you can even set some conditions. If somebody is trying to access Office 365 and the person is not in our allowed location, block access. So that is where conditions comes in. So these conditions now are more or less like the signals that you can follow. So for target resources, these are the resources you want to target. Do you want to target all apps or you want to target specific apps? You can select. So when we are doing the lab, we are going to look at other areas that you can apply the policies to. So let's just continue. So now let's look at the block access, the grant and block access control. So to block access, we can see here, use carefully or you could block your system. So for you, if you are creating any policy to block access, be very careful because any mistake you make can affect you. So it's not as if I'm putting fear in our mind, but if you are creating any conditional access policy, even in your own tenant, you need to be careful before you lock yourself out. So somebody said, please, is it not related to conditional access, but what is Exchange Online apps and what are they used for? Can they be accessed from my apps or portal? Yes, they can. Exchange Online apps can be. Exchange Online is more or less like the engine room for Outlook. So Exchange Online is just for mails, like that's where you configure your user mailbox, you enable archive, you create shared mailbox. So Exchange Online is just where you manage mailbox. So anybody that have Exchange Online license automatically has a mailbox. So Exchange Online is just like, if we are saying Exchange Online apps, we are talking about Outlook. Maybe for instance, we want to block access. If somebody wants to sign into Outlook or Exchange, maybe if somebody wants to sign into Exchange Online, we can say, okay, we are actually, we want to require MFA so that if somebody wants to sign into Exchange Online, the person should actually provide MFA before he can sign in. So that's just what this particular stuff is all about. So you can access Exchange Online. For you to access Exchange Online, you have to be an administrator. But if you are a user, it's Outlook that you will see. If you go to my apps, you won't see Exchange Online. So Exchange Online is the admin center where you manage mailboxes and maybe shared mailbox, you manage transport through, and you manage connectors. So that's just for Exchange Online. So not everybody have access to Exchange Online. It's only the administrators. It's only Outlook that every user have access to. If you have Exchange Online plan or Exchange Online license, then you have access to Outlook. But for this Exchange Online itself, so it's where you manage your mailboxes. So I don't know if I answered your question. Koroma Toluwalashe. Okay. So thank you. So if you want to use block access, the best way to use block access is to always test it with what if or report only mode. When Chidima taught us, she taught us how to use what if to know the effect of conditionals of any policy you want to create before you create it or before you apply it. If you are creating block access, ensure that you are careful so you don't block your system and always test it with what if or report only mode. So report only mode is not actually enforcing the policy. The policy will be in report mode. So if people are trying to violate, you'll be seeing it from the conditional access policy logs. You'll be seeing it, okay, somebody is trying to sign in and you will see the effects even before you enable it. So the best is, as security engineer, it's not good to be rushing when you are creating policies. It's good you put it in report only mode first so that you observe the effect before you turn it on, most especially if you are creating a block access policy. So the next is grant access. So grant access enforces several different controls before allowing access. So for grant now, we can see here, you can require multi-factor authentication before you grant access. You can require device to be marked as compliant. Then you can require hybrid Azure AD joined. You can require approved client apps, and you can require app protection policy. So all these are things you can enforce before you grant access. Most times, so organizations will just only require multi-factor authentication. But best practice, if you want to enforce conditional access policy, it's good you have specific conditional access policy for specific use case. You have conditional access policy for device compliance. You have conditional access policy for enforcing MFA for all users, and you have conditional access policy for enforcing MFA for administrators. So that is one of the best ways of creating conditional access policy. Not that you just create one conditional access policy to do all the settings you want to do. You might end up blocking yourself. So that's just it. You are creating conditional access policy, so you need to plan very well before you create conditional access policy. So these are the ways you can, these are the grants, several different scenarios that you can grant access. So you can do all this. You can enable, some organizations can enable require multi-factor authentication and require devices to be marked as compliant. If, for instance, you want the device to be hybrid AD join, so this is one of the highest level of security you can do. So require hybrid Azure AD join, meaning that if the device is not hybrid AD join, don't even allow access. That means the person will not be able to work. So those are the things that you do if you want to grant access. So this conditional access policy now is just the name here is conditional access documentation. So I'm just trying to explain the grant features of conditional access policy. So if you see block, that means you don't even need to get MFA from the user. You are blocking the person completely. So grant is when maybe, for instance, the person does not meet the condition, or the person meets the condition, but before you grant access, you want the person to provide multi-factor authentication. Then you provide multi-factor authentication. Then if you want to actually maybe require hybrid Azure AD joined, you can actually do that. So these are just the grant access features of conditional access policy. So the next is section-based access control. Sometimes you can use section-based. You can use section-based. We have talked about grants, we have talked about sections, and we have talked about target resources. So if we're looking at section access control, for section access control now, you can use conditional access policy to enforce application restriction, application sign-in frequency, and all. So for instance now, if you check this box for use conditional access policy app control, then automatically you are trying to do some settings for the application. So if you are limiting the experience of the user application within a specific cloud application, then if you want to do this, maybe you want to limit the experience of the user, then you can use all this to enforce conditional access, to enforce the conditional access policy. You can use global secure access security profile. So all these are advanced ways of applying conditional access policy using section based. So you can do persistent browser section, you can do customized conditional access evaluation. So this conditional access evaluation, we are going to look at it. So this conditional access evaluation is good maybe when you are doing maybe location, you are doing a location based policy. Maybe somebody is actually in Nigeria, then a person now use VPN to sign in maybe from UK or so, and you have blocked UK, or maybe the person is an hacker, but the person is not in that particular location that is in the allowed list, and the person okay, let me paint the scenario like this because I want us to understand this continuous access evaluation and how it works. So the way if you are using sections, maybe you are, after you have granted the policy, you want to now control the section. If you are doing continuous access evaluation, that means it will be assessing every sections that the person is signing into. At any point in time, if the policy is violated, it will block. You know, sometimes somebody, maybe for instance, let me use this example. Maybe you want to enter somebody's house and they say, the only people that can enter that house are people that are on black. And maybe the person now say, yes, I will enter. Then when I enter with my black, when I enter inside, I will change to white. You know, automatically, if there's policies in that house, you enter with white, you enter with black, then you now change to white, they will send you out. But in some cases, they may not send you out. But in Entra ID, if you enable customized continuous access evaluation, if you sign into a location from Nigeria, then you now change your location, maybe because of what you want to do, it will block you immediately. You must have to reset your location back to Nigeria before you'll be able to work. That is just continuous access evaluation. It evaluates your access, like any changes you make as you are doing anything. If there's any violation, it blocks you. That is how you can control sections with continuous access evaluation. So you can also disable resilience default. So all these things are things that you can configure based on the requirements or the use case. But let's just know that we can control sections on specific conditions. So if the user has met or failed to meet, so anytime, for instance, you met it at some point, then you now fail to meet it, it will block you. So you can use all these sections to actually control access to a user. So I don't know if anybody have questions before we proceed or we go to the next slide for section. So section is more or less like you are trying to control the sections. Like if there's any change at any point in time, then you automatically block. So for sign-in frequency, if somebody is trying to sign in multiple times, like you can actually, maybe for instance, if somebody sign into his browser and the person is trying to sign in, maybe sign in again, it should continue to evaluate to ensure that the device actually meets the standard of the conditional access policy or is following the particular signal. That's just what this is all about. So since there's no question, we'll just proceed to the next, which is template-based conditional access policy. So for template-based conditional access policy, Microsoft has 14 policy template that is available. If you want to create conditional access policy based on templates, if you go to your conditional access policy page, which we are going to look at, if you go to the template, you will see template for secure foundation. So let me just go to my Entra page so I can show us that so we can see how to use it. So from here now, if I go to conditional access policy, if I click on conditional access policy, under the overview page here, so you can see create policy from template. So if I click on create policy from template now, I'm going to see those settings. So you can, if you want to create policy, maybe you're an admin, you are confused, you don't know what to create, you can just come here, require multi-factor authentication for admins. So if you want to create a policy to require multi-factor authentication from admin and you are confused on what to do, you can just come here, click on view. So once you click on view and you come down, you can come here to, you can review the policy before you create it. So if you click on review, you are now going to see the settings. So the policy here is require multi-factor authentication for admins. Then the policy state is report only. If you turn it on, it means that you are turning on the policy immediately. Like I made mention before, it is best before you turn on any policy, you put it on report only so that you observe it before turning it on. So if you come down, it always excludes the current user. It always excludes the current user because if maybe peradventure the policy was not configured properly, at least the current user will be able to sign in to adjust it. So these are the rules that are included. Remember, this policy is to require multi-factor authentications for admins, and somebody is an administrator. For somebody to be an administrator, the person must belong to any of these rules. So if you don't belong to any of these rules in your organization, you are not an administrator, you are just a user. So if you are not a member of Global Admin, Security Admin, SharePoint, Exchange, Conditional Access, Helpdesk, Billing, User, Authentication Application, Cloud Application, Password, Privilege Authentication, you are not an admin. So this policy now is to require multi-factor authentication for only admin. So let's see the application. So the application now is all cloud apps. This one did not even filter for maybe only Exchange Online or only SharePoint or only OneDrive, all cloud apps. That means anybody that is in this role. So they target the role itself. Global admin is an admin role. So they target all the roles. So anybody that is in this role, then the person must provide multi-factor authentication before the person can have access to any cloud apps completely. So this is how you can use templates to create a policy to require multi-factor authentication for admin. Let's say we are just starting, we are confused and we don't know what to do. So you can use this. It can actually help you. So I'm not creating this policy. So I'll just click on cancel. I'll close it here. I'll click on OK. We'll also go back to create new policy from template. So if we come here now, we can see other policies we can create. You can create policy to block legacy authentication. So if you want to block legacy authentication, block legacy authentication endpoints that can be used to bypass multi-factor authentication. So you can use this if you don't want maybe somebody to use legacy authentication to bypass multi-factor authentication. So all these are policies that is recommended that you create, but you can't create all these policies. That is why you need to plan. If your organization are not using hybrid Azure AD joint devices, there is no point creating this policy for hybrid Azure AD joint devices. If your devices are not enrolled to Intune, there's no point creating require compliance, because for a device to be compliant, it means that the device has to be managed by Microsoft Intune. So that is why some of all these things, it's not everything you create, but it's just here as a pointer. So if you go to Zero Trust, you can see some policies for Zero Trust. Require multi-factor authentication for admin, secure security info registration, block legacy authentication, require multi-factor authentication for risky signing. So if you want to create, maybe for instance, your CTO just calls you, Greg, go and create conditional access policy that go and create conditional access policy for risky signings, and you are confused, you don't know what to do. You can come to template here and click on require multi-factor authentication for risky signings. Then you click on review and create. It shows you, okay, you will now know what to do. Risk level. So the policy you are creating now is based on risk level. If the risk level is high or medium, require multi-factor authentication. That means if the risk level is low, the person will just sign in. So risk level has to do with like, maybe how will I even put it now? Volume. If it is high or medium, that means the risk is actually something that you need to put into consideration. But if it is low, you can always bypass that one. So somebody asks, what is an example of legacy authentication? So legacy authentication is just like basic authentication. So basic authentication is when maybe, for instance, you want to sign in with your username and password, but multi-factor authentication, as in if you're using basic authentication, it doesn't support multi-factor authentication. So somebody that have an application that use basic authentication technology to sign in, the person can bypass multi-factor authentication. Then if the person sign in, the person can now use that application. Maybe if the application is created to like inflict your environment, then the person can use that application to inflict your environment. But if you block legacy authentication completely using using conditional access policy, then the person will not be able to even sign into legacy apps using any user credentials in your environment. So basically, you know that there are some applications that you want to configure that use basic authentication. Basic authentication, once you just put your username and password, you are already in. But if you are using, if the application supports modern authentication, then modern authentication, MFA works with modern authentication, but MFA does not work with legacy authentication. So some hackers, they build their pen tools and all those tools they use to hack environment based on legacy authentication. But if you create that policy to block legacy authentication, then the person will not even have access to even sign into your environment. So that is an example of legacy authentication. Legacy authentication is just username and password you are in. So there are some websites that they don't even have second level of authentication. Once you just go there, you just sign in and that's all. So those websites are using legacy authentication. They are not using modern authentication. So that's just an example of legacy authentication. When you just provide your username and password and you just sign in completely without second level verification, even if you have already enabled multi-factor authentication. But if the application you are trying to sign into does not support multi-factor authentication, you will sign in. So that's just it. So, but if you have blocked legacy authentication completely, then even if the application supports or the application does not support, it will block. It will not work. That means your user will not even be able to sign into applications that use legacy authentication completely. If they must sign into application that use legacy authentication, they have to reach out to you. Then you as a security engineer, you have to check the application's integrity to know if the application is worth them logging into before you exempt them from the conditional access policy. So we'll continue for the risk-based policy. So you can actually do all this. You can basically, template is more or less like giving you idea of what you want to do before you do it. So that's just creating policy from template. So we'll just continue with our slide. So if you want to create policy from template, let me go over it again. Once you click on conditional access policy, from conditional access policy, you will see create new policy from template. So if you click on create new policy from template, it automatically creates policy. So if I click on it now, maybe I want to create policy to block legacy authentication. If I click on view and I click on review and create, so I can turn off this policy. Let me create this conditional access policy, but it's off. So it won't have any effect. So that is why I'm even creating it. So let me go to policies. So if I come to policies now, I can see block legacy authentication. So if I click on legacy authentication now, you can see the policy, you can edit it. So this policy targets all users and excluded a particular user. So if I click on this policy now, you can see it targets all users, but there's exclusion. So if I click on exclusion, it only excluded me because I was the one that created the policy. So if you are creating a policy, you are always excluded. So if we come to target resources, so it targets all cloud apps. Then the next is condition. So if you click on condition now, so the condition here now is where if somebody is trying to sign in to using other clients or exchange active sync. So this is what you configure for client app. Remember, you can configure condition, you can use applications as signals. So from here now, we have modern authentication clients. So these are example of modern authentication clients. You have browser, you have mobile apps, but we now have legacy authentication clients. So browsers and mobile apps and desktop clients are actually modern authentication clients, but for legacy authentication clients or basic authentication clients, most of them work with Exchange Active Sync clients and other clients. So you can block these two. So that if somebody is trying to sign in from any of these applications that support legacy authentication, you should block them. So if we now come here now, for the grant access is block. So you can, if you are doing block, that means you are blocking completely. You are not even allowing the person to be able to sign in. So you can block completely. So that's just a way of creating conditional access policy to block legacy authentication. You can see, even if I'm just a beginner, I just create, even if, let's say, for instance, I'm a beginner, this policy, I created it from templates. So template enables everybody, whether you're a beginner, you're an expert, you can create policy directly in conditional access, but it doesn't mean that you can just go and create anything. Before you create it, you need to check very well. So this policy now is targeting all apps. I'm excluding myself. There's no network configuration there. The only condition I set for this policy is just for client apps. So if somebody is trying to sign into client apps that support legacy clients, I'm blocking them. So these are other things you can configure. You can do user risk. So user risk is the likelihood that the user account is compromised, while sign-in risk is the likelihood that the sign-in section has been compromised. So if you want to create policy based on user risk or sign-in risk, then you can create it as a condition, which means if user risk level is high or low, lock access. If user risk level, some can say if user risk level is high or low, require multi-factor authentication, depending on what you want to create. So this is how to create policy from templates. So let me just block this. So if I turn it on now, that means the policy have started working, but I don't want to turn it on because it's just, we're just doing our demonstrations. So let me go back to my slide. So like I showed us, if you want to access it, just go to Microsoft Entra Admin Center. From Microsoft Entra Admin Center, you click on Conditional Access Policy, then you click on Create New Policy from Template. So let's look at examples of conditional access policy scenario. So you can require registration from a trusted location. You can block access by location. You can require compliant devices. You can exclude access from emergency and service accounts. So these are examples of conditional access policy scenarios. Let's say, for instance, your CTO can tell you that they want users that they want to only allow users that their devices are compliant to be able to access companies' apps. Then in that case, you need to create a conditional access policy to require compliant devices. So if you want to block access by location, so you can create a conditional access policy that we allow some particular locations to sign in and block other locations using named location. And you can also require registration from trusted locations. Maybe, for instance, somebody want to do Microsoft Entra registration or Microsoft Entra device join. You can create a policy to prevent the user from doing it from a location that is outside your company location. And that is it's almost the same thing with block access by location. So if, for instance, now somebody is in UK and the person wants to enroll his devices and UK is not in your allowed location, the person will not even be able to work completely. You won't be able to work because you can't even register that device. You can't even join that device to Entra ID because your location is not in the allowed location. So, Baba Femi Adebayo, your hand is raised. Can you ask your question?
Okay, thank you. I don't know if this question is relevant anyway, but I got distracted for about 2 minutes, so I don't know if you talked about it. You said something about risk level the other time. So I want to ask if there is a way the portal is able to identify how high or low the risk is in order to know which of the authentication level to allow. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. And what's the yardstick for rating if the risk is high or is low? Thank you. I don't know if you understand my question.
Yeah, I understand your question very well. I'm coming. So I want us to check it. So that's a very good question. That's a very good, the question you asked is a very good question. So Microsoft have a technology that can actually define a policy to be high or low. So based on particular scenario. So I want to show us that because I want us to use Microsoft Doc to actually check it. Risky detection type. So risk level. So real time location, because actually is if for instance somebody is trying to sign in from maybe somebody is trying to sign in from an unknown location, that's medium. So there here now we can see risk level medium signifies that Microsoft is highly confident that the account is compromised, such as threat intelligence and known pattern factors. So I want to actually show us those things. So from here now we can see detection can let me increase this. Let me increase this so we can actually learn from Microsoft Learn. So risk levels. So ID protection categorizes this risk level into 3 tiers. We have low, we have medium, and we have high. So risk level are calculated by our machine learning algorithm and represent how confident Microsoft is that one or more of our user credentials are known by unauthorized entity. So detection can fire at more than one risk level depending on the confidential level. For example, unfamiliar sign-in properties might fire at high. So if somebody is trying to sign in from an unfamiliar location, so Microsoft categorizes it as high, medium, or low based on the familiarity with the signing properties. So other detections like leaked credentials, you can see how Microsoft is able to categorize if it's high, low, or medium. So leaked credentials, verify track actor IP are always delivered as high risks because we found proof of the leaked credentials or the bad actor. So if somebody fall into this category, like the person credential leaked or the person is signing in from a verified threat actor's IP, then that is high. So if you create a risk-based policy and you set it to be high, then if the scenario falls into maybe the credential has been leaked or a bad actor is trying to maybe sign in from an IP that is known by Microsoft that is used by that actor, then it will be regarded as high. So if you want to learn more, you can just come to this. Let me share this link. So once you go to this link, you'll be able to find out if probably the risk level, you'll be able to know different risk level because it comes out in exam. Like I'm preparing for an exam. So the exam I'm preparing for, this question is always coming out. They will tell you, okay, risk-based policy. If they create a risk-based policy for low priorities and medium priorities. So they will not ask question. If somebody is trying to sign in from unknown location, will the conditional access policy block the person? If somebody is trying to sign in from a machine that is running a malicious software, will the person be able to sign in? So a machine that is running malicious software is categorized as medium, not even high. So we can see the high policy here, like the categorization for high, like leak credentials and verified threat actors IP. So if you want to learn more, you can just go to, I think I've dropped it on the chat. You can read more to learn more of the risk levels. So I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, so you can always learn more from Microsoft Learn to understand all these things. Like, so agents can detect. So you know everything these days now is agent. Everything agent. So agents can also detect if maybe the policy is high or low, because our solutions are always learning. So there are algorithm that enables them to learn. So those are the things that we just need to know. Yeah. So thank you for that question. It's good you asked that question, because if you had not asked that question, I would have even forgot to actually talk about that. So thank you very much. So let me go to the next slide. So at least we have understood how to create policy from templates. So conditional access terms of use, TOU. So terms of use is very important. So you can create terms of use so that if maybe, for instance, this is actually new. Maybe for instance, if somebody wants to, if maybe the first time somebody is trying to maybe set up MFE, the person should read the terms and conditions first. So you upload the terms and conditions here. Your terms and conditions could be this policy is actually created to actually protect you as a user against bad actors, so that if you are signing in from an unknown location, it will block you. You can just put the write up like that. Then you can now say if you agree to these terms and conditions, say yes or no. So if the person say no, that means the person will not be able to enforce conditional access policy. Then the person will not be able to sign in. Then it's just like you go and return your laptop back that I'm not working again. So this is just majorly why people create terms and conditions is for user consent. Because some users will tell you, I did not know. I did not know that you did this. So to prevent I don't know, terms of use is very important. So I'm going to show us this in the lab. So for terms of use, so we are going to implement this, how to implement conditional access policy rules and assignments. So we can actually do this lab before we even continue. So let's create a conditional access policy from scratch, so that will show us how we can configure most of the settings in conditional access policy. So let me go back to that browser. Okay. So back to Microsoft Entra ID. So if we come to Microsoft Entra ID now and we refresh the page here. So if we want to create a new conditional access policy, all we need to do is to click on new policy. So I'm going to now explain grants, how we can exclude, how we can apply policy to apps, how we can do section based and all. So I'll click on new policy. So this policy now, I'll call it Microsoft Naija. Let me use the short form. Naija Security User Group CA. So that's the name of the policy. Then for assignments now, assignment is more or less like, who are you assigning this policy to? So I want us to look at this drop down very well. You can assign policy to agents. This is in preview. So let's know that now you can assign conditional access policy to agents. You can be in an interview. You know, some interviewers, they like asking to know if you are really up to date. You can formally, you won't see agent here, but now you can, because you know that agent also authenticates. If you are using Microsoft Security Copilot and you want to add custom plugins so that you can maybe fetch data from maybe Microsoft Entra ID or fetch data from Exchange Online, the agent that will actually fetch those data needs to authenticate. You can apply conditional access policy to that agent. If you click on agent now, you have to select the agent. Me now, I don't have any agent in my organization, but at Adibin, I have an agent. And remember, an agent works like a human being. An agent can do what a human being can do, but no agent can replace a human being. It's not possible because we are created, as in we are very unique. Everybody in this world is more unique than any agent because we actually designed those agents, so they cannot be more unique than us. But agents can actually help you do a lot of things, like maybe for instance, if you are a salesperson, if they send you a customer send an email that they want to buy business basic license. And normally, after they send that email, you will tell them, thank you for contacting us. I will get back to you. Then, as soon as you send them that email, you will now go and check and write the quote. Once you write the quote, you now share the quote to them and with the price. So an agent can do that in such a way that the agent can work on trigger. Anytime an email comes from maybe a particular domain or from users outside our organization with license or anything, there can be a lot of signals there. Send this welcome email telling them that thank you for contacting us. You can see how the agent can replace a sales can help a salesperson work. Then reply this email. Then the agent can also go and even check maybe your SharePoint to see if there's if you have written a quote like that to a customer before, then work on the quote and send it to the customer. So you see how agents can work, but sometimes the agent can also be trapped. If, for instance, maybe all the quotes you are always working for customers have always been business basic, premium, and standard, then somebody now send quote for Power BI, and the agent go and check SharePoint, it did not see Power BI. Automatically, it has to escalate to you. So you see why humans are more unique, because agent too, they need you to tell them what to do. If you don't tell them what to do, they won't be able to do it. So you can also assign conditional access policy to agents. Agents, you can assign conditional access policy to agents, not just users and groups. And also, if you want to assign conditional access policy, you can assign it to all users. But you see this one in here. Don't lock yourself out. This policy will affect all your users. We recommend applying this policy to small set of users first to verify it behaves as expected. So it's good. Before you apply policy to everybody, apply it to small set of users so to test. And most times apply it to your friends. People that you can tell, how far, no vex, so na test that they test so. Because in every organization you have friends. Push it to your friends so that at least you can always tell them sorry. At least life goes on. Then you go and apply it to the entire organization and your MD is there. What will you tell your MD? So those are the things you need to take note of. So if you're applying policies to all users, you can as well exclude. If you click on exclude, you can now go to users and groups and exclude some people that you don't want the policy to apply to. I can see I want to exclude Amina. I want to exclude Azim. I want to exclude Bill. I want to exclude Chris. I want to exclude Fortune. I want to exclude Daniel. I want to exclude Deji. I want to exclude Emmanuel Itoje because it's my Oga. I want to exclude IT administrator. I want to exclude Enobom. I want to exclude IT service. I want to exclude goodness. And now, junior IT, who they be? I beg, legal people. I'm excluding them so that they won't give me problem. So you can exclude all these things like this. You can say select. This policy now, I've configured it to include all users, and I've also excluded some specific users. I've excluded 9 users and 4 groups. So among these people here, Azim is a user, Amina is a user, Bill, Chris. There are some groups. Fortune 2024 is a group. IT administrators is a group. IT legal is a group. So you can create a policy and you can also exclude some users. And aside users, you can exclude directory roles. If I click on directory roles now, I can also exclude some roles. Like maybe if I want to exclude, let's say, global admin, I can exclude global admin. So let me see. Select at least one row. So let me see. So let me close this guy. So if you want to exclude a row, if you collapse this guy now, you can exclude any role. Maybe for instance, you don't want this policy to apply to your global administrators. You can just come down, look for global admin. Where's global admin? So global admin. Okay, global admin. So you can exclude global admin. So this policy now, I've excluded Amina. I've excluded 9 users and 4 group. I've also excluded global admin, and you can also exclude guests. You can exclude guests. So most times you can select the guest you want to exclude, because somebody that is guest in your organization, why will you be applying conditional access policies to the person? You can exclude B2B collaboration guest users. You can exclude local guest users. You can exclude any of the guest users you want to exclude, as the case may be. So you can do a lot of exclusions. You can do a lot of customizations. But with security defaults, you can actually do all this. Security default just applies to everybody in the organizations. But with this, you can do your exclusions. You can exclude whosoever you want to exclude. So now let's go to target resources. So for target resources, you can target all agent resources. You see, anything agent is in preview because it's still in public preview. It's not yet out. So you can target all resources. If you see all resources, that means it's targeting all resources. And Microsoft will always warn you, don't lock yourself out. This policy impacts the Azure portal. Before you continue, ensure someone else will be able to get back into the portal. So they always tell you, ensure somebody will be able to get back into the portal. So that is why we have to be careful in creating all this conditional access policy. So if you say cloud resources, all cloud apps, you can also do it. Then if you want to exclude, you can now come here and exclude some apps if you like. You can now exclude, maybe you want to exclude Exchange Online. You want conditional access policy to apply to all resources, excluding some apps. You can now come here and say select specific app. So I can say, okay, I want to exclude maybe Admin so that if somebody is trying to, maybe Admin they don't want me to use they don't want me to use MFA. I can exclude Admin from this policy so that if I'm signing into Admin it should not require MFA. So that is the exclusion. So if you are targeting all resources and you are excluding some resources, meaning that the policy will not affect that resource that you are targeting. So let me select another, let me look for another one. Let me look for any other one. So Microsoft Intune. If you're sending to Microsoft Intune, I want it to apply to Microsoft Intune. You can see different apps that you can apply, that you can exclude, or you can apply the policy to. So I can say I want to exclude Outlook Online, and I can see also I want to exclude Sales Insight Web App. So basically, it depends on your organization. Your CEO or your CTO can tell you, I want you to exclude Exchange Online. If you're excluding Exchange Online, that means it's affecting Outlook. They can tell you exclude anything. So depending on your organization, that is what you exclude. So that's just it. Somebody asks, how can we get all the resources on your tenant? I don't have them in my own. Okay, so most of these resources I have in my tenant is because this my tenant has been existing for a very long time. That is why I've been using it for a lot of things. So the more you work as an admin, you will even get things that are more than this because you create, you do a lot of integrations, you do a lot of things. So the more you work, the more you get more things. Had it been I can share, probably I would have shared. But unfortunately, I cannot share because all these things are things I've worked with. Like AdminDroid now is an enterprise application. This is an enterprise application. So most of them here, so I added it as an enterprise application, core quality dashboard. All these are just things, but basically depend on your license too. Maybe because I'm using Microsoft developer license. So of course, your license depends the apps you will have. So if your license is business basic, you may not see all these apps. All these ones are third-party apps, but all these Microsoft apps like Azure Support, Business Central, and the likes, you may not see it in your own. So those are just the things. So if you come to agent blueprints, there's no agent blueprints there, but I've selected these apps. So I'm just trying to explain to us how we can actually exclude some apps. So these apps, now if I come to include, I said all Office apps, but I still excluded some apps here. And you can also apply policy to users. So you can apply policy to user actions. You can do authentication contests. So if I click on user action now, if I select user action, so you can select action, you can select the action this policy will apply to. Register security info. If somebody want to register security info, I can say require MFA or block access, or register or join device. I can create policy to anytime anybody want to register or want to join device, I can say block. I can block. So depending. So you can, aside applying policies to resources like apps, you can apply policies, you can target users directly. So how can you target users? You can select the actions that the users want to perform. Like this register or join devices now is best practice. You create a policy, you create a conditional access policy for register or join devices. Because if you don't create conditional access policy to enable MFA when somebody is trying to register or join devices, somebody outside, maybe a user in your organization that the credentials has been leaked, the hacker can, and maybe for instance, you have a conditional access policy stating that if somebody wants to sign into your cloud apps, the device should be marked as compliant. The person will see, okay, at least I have the person's credentials. Then if the person wants to now maybe enroll the device to Entra ID, it will say provide multi-factor authentication. The person will now hook, even with the fact that I have this credential, I cannot. So it's good we are 10 times faster than those guys. So if you create conditional access policy to register, or that means if somebody is trying to register his devices to your environment, he must provide MFA. If somebody is trying to do security, if somebody is trying to register security info, the person must provide MFA. So those are the things. Registering security info is more or less like, for instance, you already have multi-factor authentication. You use Microsoft Authenticator app. Then you now want to add SMS or you want to add phone number. So if you want to do any registration of security information, it must require MFA because those hackers are very tough. This is an example. Maybe for instance, God forbid, I misplaced my phone. Then because I misplaced my phone, the person is able to sign into Office apps because my Authenticator app is in my phone. You see one disadvantage? Because my Authenticator app is in my phone, the person can be able to sign in to my phone. You understand? Then the person may now want to do it in such a way that he wants to remove my phone so that it will be his phone that will be doing the authentication. If the person go to register security information, it will now ask the person for MFA. But in that case, if the person is with your phone, then there's an issue. So that is why most times, if you misplace your phone and you know your phone is what you are using for MFA, try and report to your admins immediately because you don't know who is going to steal your phone, most especially if our phone doesn't have password before. You understand? Even if the phone has password, it could be using maybe text message. And that's why Microsoft is advising customers not to be using text message or what are they calling it? Or phone call. Because if you're using text message and your phone is with the person can use call option. Because your phone is locked, the person cannot go to Authenticator app. The person will call. Are you the one? Yes. Click on hash. The person will sign in. If it's text message, the code will just show notify. That is why most times if you are using phone number or all these things, it's not really strong. But if you are using Authenticator app, before the person will even use the Authenticator app, you need to sign into the phone. The person can as well remove your SIM and put it in a torchlight phone. You will receive SMS. You will receive what you want to receive. So that is why most times for you to register security info, it's good you create conditional access policy for security info registration. Because if somebody is trying to register his own device, maybe your device got misplaced and somebody is trying to register his own device, it should block the person. You can even block, like register security info block, so that no, the person should not be able to register. Or you can say, before you register security info, do multi-factor authentication. So those are the things that you can do. So you can create conditional access policy that will affect user actions, and you can also do for authentication context. But this authentication context now is used to secure application data and actions in apps like SharePoint and Microsoft Cloud App Security. So me now, I don't have this license. I don't have Cloud App Security. So I may not be able to enjoy that feature. But let's just note that the resources you can target for conditional access policy is you can target cloud apps, you can target user actions, and you can target authentication contests. So here now, we're only targeting cloud apps. So I don't want to do that one for user registration. So I'll just leave that one, but let's just note and what it's used for. Yeah. Somebody, you have a question. If you have a question, you can ask. Okay, let me just continue. So I'll come back to network. So for network now, Like we made mention the other time, you can create conditional access policy that will control network access. Like if somebody is trying to sign in now, you can say, if you want to configure it, you click on yes. If you say yes, you can say any network location. That means, but let me not confuse us. Let me just leave this one. I'll create another policy for network locations, so we'll understand that. So for conditions now, you can now specify other conditions, like if, for instance, like the way this policy is now, let me remove user actions from here so that it won't give us that error. So from here now, we name the policy. We apply the policy to all users. We excluded guests and external users. And we also excluded, if I click on exclude now, these are the people we excluded. We excluded guests, we excluded the we excluded all Microsoft Entra external organization, and we excluded global admins, and we now excluded some users and some groups. So if I come back to target resources, we targeted cloud apps. So we didn't target user and we didn't target authentication. So for network now, this one we're going to talk about it. So for conditions, this is where you can now create user risk. You can see if somebody is trying to sign into, if any of the user here that is included in the policy is trying to sign into those cloud apps that you selected, and the user account is compromised. If you select this user account is compromised, you can now select high. Most times it's good you select high and medium to avoid false positive. So if you select high and medium, it's okay. You can say done. Some people, so you can come to sign-in risk also. You can do anyone you want to do. You can just create high, medium. You can do it like this. Like if the sign-in risk is compromised, you click on done. But this policy I'm creating now is too much to be in one policy. So that's why it's good. If you're creating your policy, you create different policies. So let me refresh. Have I locked myself out? So sometimes I've not locked myself out. So it could be network. So everything has gone. Maybe because I spent time. So let me just name the policy again. Let me just say Microsoft Naija CA. So I don't want to rush. I want us to really understand all these things. So I'll select all users. I'll come to exclude. I'll exclude everybody here. I'll just exclude these two. Then I will now exclude some users also. So let me come to users and groups. I will select some users that I want to exclude. Let me exclude only Emmanuel. So, or let me just exclude enroll devices and bill. So I'll click on select. So I've excluded those users now. Then for directory roles, I can also exclude global admin, just like we did the other time. Global administrator. I've excluded the global administrator. So I'll now come to target resources. So I can target all office resources. So if I target all office resources, I can now exclude some. So if I want to exclude, I'll click on select resources. Then I select the resources I want to exclude. Then I'll now come down and exclude maybe only Exchange Online. So that at any point in time, nobody should call me and tell me that they cannot send, that they are trying to log into Outlook and it's giving them issue. So I'll just come to Exchange Online. Where is Exchange Online again? Sometimes looking for all these things can be a bit stressful. Let me search for it. Exchange Online. Okay. This is not what I'm targeting. Let me say Microsoft Exchange. Okay, yeah. Microsoft Exchange Online Protection. This is not what I'm looking for. Yeah, but let me just select it as an example. Maybe I want to exclude Microsoft Exchange Online Protection. You select it so you can exclude any apps. So this exclusion now is very important. Maybe for instance, your organization have some enterprise application that they are using and they want to exclude that application. So you can also exclude the application from here. Maybe you're working in a cybersecurity company where you have red team that they do penetration testing and you want to exclude the application they use for pen testing, you can exclude it from here. So that is just one example of the exclusion you can do here. So let me just say select. Then now we are done with the resources. So we are not going to touch network. So for condition, I can say if somebody is trying to sign in, if any of the included user is trying to sign into any of the included Office apps here, and the sign-in risk, I can use sign-in risk. I can say the sign-in risk is high. I can say the sign-in risk is high. Then if the sign-in risk is high or medium, and I click on done, I can now come here and say maybe the device platform. For device platform now, you can now select and say, okay, and the device platform is Windows. So I want this policy to only target Windows devices. I want it to target only Windows devices. I don't want it to target Mac, iOS, or Linux. I want it to only target Windows devices. Then I can now come to grants. So for grants, I can say if somebody is trying to sign in to any of these apps and the user account is, the user risk level is high or medium, and the person is trying to sign in from a Windows computer, then I can either say require multi-factor authentication, or I can say require devices to be marked as compliant. So this require devices to be marked as compliant or require Microsoft Entra ID registration only is useful if you are using Microsoft Intune for device management. That is when you can require device to be marked as compliant, because if when you are using Intune, that device can even be marked as compliant, because once you onboard a device, you can create device compliance policy to enable compliance for your devices. So, but for this case, we can just leave that. So as it is now, I will just say require. That means what I'm trying to say is that if the person fall into any of this category or the condition that I specify, I will grant the person access. But before I grant the person access, the person must provide multi-factor authentication. If you want the policy more strict, you can say, okay, require multi-factor authentication strength. Then you can now specify if you want, like what Haladu was teaching us yesterday. If you are using passwordless authentication, you can now say use passwordless MFA. But before you select this, you ensure that all the devices in your organization support passwordless authentication, because some devices doesn't support passwordless authentication, not all. So those are things that you need to check. Before you create conditional access policy, you need to plan to ensure that you are ready before you even create it. So we'll just leave it to require multi-factor authentication. We won't check this. Just require multi-factor authentication, that's all. So you can do all these other things. So if you say terms of use, if you have terms of use configured, you can now select it so that before the person even do all these things, the terms of use will display for the person. So I will just say select. So after that, the next is section. So for section now, like I explained the other time, you can now use, maybe you want to use persistent browser section. So if you click on it, persistent browser section allow user to remain signed in after closing and reopening their browser windows. So most times, if you click on the button here, it tells you exactly what the settings is. This control works for various cloud apps. Then sign-in frequency, time period before a user is asked to sign in again. So if you want to use sign-in frequency, you can set period. Like you can say maybe 60 minutes. After 60 minutes, the person will sign in again. So most times, if this policy, you are creating it for consultants, you can do that. Yeah, Patrick, you can ask your question.
All right. Good evening. Thank you for the presentation. I'm really enjoying it. Yes, my question is about terms of use. You have rightly made mention of it quite a number of times here. So, would you mind to give us like a demo of it, how it may look like if one is creating a conditional access policy? You know, how it sounds like or how it looks like. Is it like a caveat, maybe something to like notify the user how to use, or I really want to get it so that I can know how
Yeah,
it works,
so
please.
times of use, you can also use it to notify the user, and you can use it to seek for the user consent. Just like, for instance, if you want to maybe book, and if you go to any website now and you want to make any transaction, they will always show you terms of use. If you are installing any Microsoft application, there is always terms of use that you have to accept before you go next. So it's just the same thing.
Okay.
So if you are using conditional access policy, you can do terms of use So all these are just used for compliance reasons, because there are some staffs that can sue the organization that maybe, for instance, if maybe there is a deal they want to close and you create conditional access policy to block them, they can say, okay, because of the admin, this so thing happened. Some of them can even sue you. They can take you to anywhere. So your defense now is, okay, there was a terms of use that I showed you, that this is what this policy should use. So terms of use is more or less like you are telling your staffs, but of course we know that people don't read those things. But even if they did not read it, it's not your business because you put it there. And that you can use it. It's just to show them.
Okay.
You can also put there the workflow of how the conditional access policy work and how it is being applied, so that at least they should understand. So that's just how it is. If
Okay.
we have time, I'll try to do it so that you see it. Thank you very
All
much
right.
for that
Thank you.
observation. I appreciate. Alimat, you can ask your question.
Okay, good evening. Thank you for the beautiful section. I
Good
just want to
evening. Thank
confirm
you.
my knowledge, please. I this frequency, this sign-in frequency and smart lockout, is it the same thing?
Sign-in frequency is different from smart lockout. So
Okay.
smart lockout is maybe, for instance, you are trying to sign in 2 to 3 times and you are putting the wrong password, so it will lock you out automatically. You have to wait for a specific time before you can log in again. But this sign-in frequency is used for conditional access policy. Maybe, for instance, you apply the conditional access policy based on location. So you are applying it based on location. You can do sign-in frequency to ensure that the person sign in at a specific time and provide them a fee, but you know it can be frustrating. So most times you only do this maybe when the person you are applying the policy to is a consultant and you just want to be sure that the person is actually you get. So you can do that for maybe for devices like, there are some companies that if you are working for them remotely, after a while, after they would like to be tracking what you are doing. So you can use this, that if the person is signing into browser, it should sign the person out if the person is not active there. So you can also use it for persistent browser section. So periodic reauthentication, you can select if you want it to be days or hours. So for hours now, you can do maybe 24 or maybe 23. So you can select the hours that you want. So if we look at it here, time period before a user is asked to sign in again when attempting to access the resources. So if, for instance, you are trying to access the resources on a browser after 24 hours, after 23 hours, you will sign in again. So that is just what this sign-in frequency is. So within that period of time, you are free. You can do what you want to do, but if it exceeds that time, you have to sign in again. That is just exactly what it is.
Okay,
So I don't know
thank
if you
you.
get that.
Yes, I
Thank
got
you.
it. Thank you.
Thank you. So the next one is persistent browser. This one, we have talked about this one, continuous access evaluation. So allows access token to be revoked based on critical event and policy evaluation in real time. This one evaluate the policy in real time rather than relying on token expiration based on lifetime. So this one is good if you want evaluation to happen, like if any little change in the user settings or anything, it automatically ask the person to sign in again and block the access. That's continuous access evaluation. Then all this disable resilient default during an outage. So you can actually do all this. So, but for sections, I'm just showing us, but we're actually not doing anything on section. So, like I made mention, and Microsoft also recommends that if you are creating conditional access policy, put it on report only first. If you're going to turn it on, you're on your own. So report only first. Because even if you call Microsoft support, they will tell you, why did you not put it in report only? Why did you go and turn it on? So report only, me self, I don't even like putting in report only, because report only, that's so you create in report only. So long as I'm excluded, there's no problem. So those are the things. So we have created that conditional access policy now. Let's say you want to create conditional access policy based on location. So we go back to conditional access policy, then we do named location. So I have some locations here, but I'm going to create a new named location so that we are going to use it. Let's call it security Naija location. Then you can determine location by IP address or by geographical coordinates. But I just want to specify some locations. So the locations now I want to allow here are some African countries that I know that my people always travel to. So example, I'm going to specify Cameroon, because Cameroon, at least from Nigeria to Cameroon is not far. Somebody can decide to go to Cameroon. Maybe they want to do something there. And Benin Republic too. Since we have boundary with Benin Republic, people can always, Benin Republic is not far. Ghana also. A colleague can say they want to go for vacation in Ghana. You can't stop them. At least they should still work from there. So those are the things that you consider if you are creating conditional access policy. So we can also select Benin Republic. I'm looking for Benin. I think it should be, what's their country? What's it? What's the name of that their
It's
country
B.
again?
You have to go off B.
Okay, Benin. Okay. Let me go up. Thank you. Benin Republic. Because I know people like to go to Benin Republic very well. Okay, it's still okay, Benin Republic. So Benin, and which other country again is close to Nigeria again that people always go? So okay, let's just use just those three countries: Benin Republic, Cameroon, and I need to also select
Niger.
Okay, Niger. Let me select Niger, and let me select Nigeria too, because at least we're in
Niger,
Nigeria
how?
now. Niger is still close to Sokoto now. They have boundaries. They have boundaries too. They have boundary close to Nigeria, but people hardly travel to Niger, Sha. But let's just put Niger. So as it is like this, we are good with these locations. So we select create. So we are creating named location. So the next policy we are going to create now is to restrict access based on location. So if I refresh this page, we are going to see it. We are going to see our location here, which is security Naija location. So this security Naija location now, I'm going to create a conditional access policy that will actually only allow this location to sign in. So let's come here, policies, then I click on new. Then this policy now, I'm going to say enforce approved location. So I'm creating this policy to enforce approved location. Enforce, okay? So this assignment now, normally I'm supposed to assign this policy to all my users, exclude nobody except the break glass account. So I'm going to be excluding myself because I don't want to lock myself out. So I will exclude myself I will only exclude myself from this policy. Then for target resources, I will say all resources. I don't care. Anything you want to access, I will block you. Then for network location now, I will now say yes. I will say all network location. That means I'm blocking all network location. Exclude company trusted location. Then I'll now I will have to select one location. So I need to select our location, which is Microsoft Naija location. So what I'm trying to do is that with this policy now, I'm saying that, okay, if anybody is trying to sign in from any network location, whether you're in China, you're in Dubai, you're in Saudi Arabia, you're in Kuwait, you're in UK, anywhere, I'm only excluding just this location. And we saw the location we allowed, Benin Republic, Cameroon, and the likes. Then for access now, I'm saying this as the access now, I'm not even saying require MFA. I'm saying block. So what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to see that anybody that is trying to sign in to any office apps that is not in Nigeria, that is not in Benin, that is not in Niger, that is not in which other country again, that is not in Ghana, that is not in Cameroon, we are blocking the person. So it's only in those locations that you can sign in. And I know why I specify those locations, because I know it's close to Nigeria and we always travel there. So most times, those are the mindsets towards named location. Because with doing all this, you are reducing your attack surface. So you are reducing your attack surface, because if you allow people to sign in from all locations, it is not best practice. People can be trying to hack you from Dubai. People can be trying to hack you from China. And you know that you have no business with China. China is not part of your boundaries that you go to or you travel to. So that's just it. So this policy, you can put it in report only and you say create. So this is how to create a network location policy to enforce network location. So let's go back to our slide so we can just wrap up. So okay, let's just see how to troubleshoot conditional access policy. So troubleshooting conditional access policy, these are the things you avoid. Like we have said all these things before. For all users and all apps, you need to avoid block access for all users and all apps, and require device to be marked as compliant. Before you create this policy, you need to be sure that you have done all the prerequisites and everything is okay before you create it. Then require hybrid Microsoft Entra ID joint devices. You need to be sure that you have already done your evaluation and most of your devices are hybrid ID joined before you enforce this policy. So these are the things you do for all users and all apps. So these are the things you avoid. So avoid when you are blocking access for all users and all apps. Ensure that you exclude, if you are blocking access, exclude one person. If you notice all the policy I'm creating, I'm always excluding myself. Because God forbid, if anything happen, at least I can still go back. So if you're creating any policy, don't claim that you are a strong admin, you are a strong security engineer and you know everything. Exclude yourself. Anything can happen. So that at least you can always go back and still get in and do what you need to do. So those are the things. So troubleshooting sign-in interruptions. So if you maybe for instance your organization, a user send you this that he got this error when trying to sign in, you can't get there from here. This application contains sensitive information and can only be accessed from devices or client application that meet Contoso management compliance. So this policy now, if maybe for instance you create a policy to allow only devices that are marked as compliant, so that is when you get this error. So the user will get this error because the device is the person is trying to sign in is not compliant at that time. So the person will get this error because the device is not a compliant device. So this error message states that the application can only be accessed from devices or client application that meet company's mobile device management policy. In this case, the application and device does not meet this policy. So if, for instance, somebody is trying to sign in and you have created this conditional access policy to enforce device compliance and the device does not meet that policy, this is the error the person will get. So when you start working and maybe somebody just send you this screenshot, you should already know that this person, the device is not compliant. You don't need to trouble yourself. All you just need to do is to ensure that the person go and join that device to Entra ID or join that device to Intune. Once the person join that device to Intune and they try to sign in, it will be good. So these are the things you need to take note of when you are troubleshooting sign-in interruptions. So the next one is maybe for instance, troubleshooting directory sign-in events. So if you are troubleshooting it, if you click on more details, so more details will give you more information. Like if you come here now, so this is the summary of the error. Maybe for instance, you are confused. If you click on more details here, these more details, maybe when you're getting that errors, you will now see the reason for that. Although because I have experience, so I already know that is because the device is not registered. That is why. So you also see it here, device state unregistered. So because the device is unregistered, that is why the device is getting that error when the device is trying to sign in. So that's just it, unregistered. So that's how you can troubleshoot. So when you click on more details, it will review the troubleshooting information that is helpful when searching the Microsoft Entra ID sign-in event for specific failure events the user saw, or when opening a support incident with Microsoft. So this will also help you. But Microsoft will ask you, what is the error? What is this? But if you are getting this error, forget it. It's because your device is not compliant. That's why. It's even telling you your device state unregistered. So that's just it. So the next we are going to look at is, although I've already explained this in the lab, implementing application control. We have talked about it. So if you want to implement application control, you can do this. Use conditional access app control. So if you are using conditional access app control, this works with Microsoft Defender for cloud apps. So this combines conditional access and Microsoft Defender for cloud apps. So if you're using Microsoft Defender for cloud apps, you can create conditional access policy using conditional access app control. So if you are the only way you can do this, I would have even demo how to create a conditional access app control that will block, download, cut, copy, and print. But I don't have Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps license. So for you to create it, let's note you need Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. So what does it do? If you check this to use conditional access app control, if for instance you have created policies in Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps to prevent cuts, copy, and print. So you are trying to use conditional access policy to enforce it on that device. So you can see how conditional access policy works with Microsoft solutions, different workloads. The device compliance now is just like conditional access policy collaborating with Microsoft Intune, because you manage devices from Microsoft Intune and you enforce device compliance from Microsoft Intune. So you can see that if device is not compliant, you can use conditional access policy to block the person. Then also, if you are using Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, you can, if you have already created policy to block, download, cut, and copy and print, you can use conditional access policy to actually block that. So, and if you want to block that, you only use conditional access app control to do that. So it enforces document labeling with Azure Information Protection. So if you want to enforce document labeling with Azure Information Protection, then you need to use conditional access app control. You want to prevent file upload, monitor logs, but all these things is money. Because if you're using Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, it's not small money you will pay, but it's good because you need to secure your environment and make everything good as a security engineer. So block access based on risk factor. So all these are features of Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. So if you use conditional access app control, you check this box under sections, then you're enforcing all this. So go. So benefit of using app protection policies. So MDM means mobile device management, while MEM means mobile application management. So if you are using app protection policy, you are protecting your company's data at app level. Let's take, for instance, if we use Netflix and Showmax, you can't screenshot Netflix. If you try to screenshot it, it will show you black page. If you try to screenshot Showmax, it will show you black page because they have created a policy to prevent data loss. If you want to record the screen when you are watching, maybe you are watching Arsenal match, maybe you are using Netflix, you are using Showmax to watch Arsenal match, and you want to record the screen, it will not allow you to record it because what are they trying to do? They are trying to prevent you from copying anything or sending anything out. So in Microsoft, you can also prevent people from copying things outside Outlook, Teams, SharePoint. So if somebody is trying to copy things outside Teams, it will block the person, like this is not allowed in your organization. So that is one advantage of or benefit of mobile application management. So end user productivity isn't affected and policies don't apply when using app in personal content. So if you are using your personal device, it won't affect you. It's only when you are using company device that it will affect you. The company is just trying to protect their data that is on that device. That is the essence of mobile application management. Then app protection policies ensures that the app layer protection are in place. So MDN, in addition to MEN, ensure that the device is protected. So for you to even apply MEN to a device, which is mobile application management, the device has to be enrolled first. So when MEN is in place, then you can now do mobile application. You can now manage the application that is in the device. So that is one advantage of all this benefit of using app protection policies. So implement section management. So this section management now, we have talked about it, but let me just talk about it again. So validation. So you can validate conditional access policy before creating it. I remember when Chidima was taking us, for those of us that joined, if you missed the class, you can go back and watch the section Chidima took when she was telling us how to use what if to. So what if to helps you check the effect of conditional access policy before you create it. So for instance, you can say user Patty Fernandez. You can select one cloud apps and select the effect. So once you do this, what it does is simulate a login from the user to target the application. Then you can select other conditions based on how the policy you can. So basically, what if is more or less like it helps you know the effect of conditional access policy on a particular user based on what you specify. So the authentication section management control shows up in the result of the two. So what if tools helps you simulate the effect of conditional access policy? So that's just what if. So for this lab, we have configured, we have done this authentication section control. So now let's look at continuous access evaluation. We have talked about it also. So the benefit of continuous access evaluation, the benefit of continuous access evaluation is that, like we can see here, there are several key benefits of continuous access evaluation. User termination or password change reset. User section revocation will be enforced in near real time. If, for instance, you are trying to change your password, maybe someone have gained access to your system and is trying to change password, automatically it will enforce real-time evaluation. So when there's network change, conditional access location policy will be enforced in near real time. So this continuous access evaluation, like as I was trying to explain the other time, it works with location. If you're using location now based on an allowed location, maybe somebody is in Gabon, then the person discovered that the only allowed location is Nigeria. Then the person now changed VPN to log into Nigeria. If at any point in time the person switch from Nigeria to Gabon, or even as at that you're using VPN, the security solutions is very smart that as you're using VPN to sign in safe, like it will still run its evaluation. If it discovers that that location is not Nigeria, it will block it. So those are the things that you can do. And sometimes you can even use geographical location. Like you can use Lagos. You can go to the map, latitude and longitude of Lagos, and put it there. So even if the person is using VPN, the VPN might just target one part of Nigeria that is not Lagos. The person will still not be able to gain access. So it refreshes the token, it assesses the token, then provides events. So that's just conditional. So number one, what conditional access evaluation does is it refreshes the token in Microsoft Entra ID. Then after refreshing it, it assesses it. Then after assessing it, it checks for events in real time. Then after checking for a event in real time, it assesses the token. Then after assessing the token, then the token is either accepted or rejected, depending on the evaluation that is done. So let's just round up. So authentication context. I think for this authentication context, you can select the authentication methods that you want to use. So you can configure authentication context. Okay, let's even look at it in this way. So conditional access is zero trust control plane that allows you to target policies for access to your apps. So it allows you to target policies for access to your app. So you can use this authentication context to actually do it. So that's just it. Please mute your mic. So this authentication context can be used to further secure data and actions in applications. These applications can be your own custom application, like your line of business apps, SharePoint application. So this helps you to secure your environment further. So that's just what this authentication context does. Like so just like what we have here, that is exactly what's on the slide. So it's almost similar to you, but it's more or less like when you want to enforce more standards. So Fugo, so I'm going to be sharing this slide. So we are going to see, if you want to know what is conditional access policy, you read this: deploy, roll out, conditional access policy with device control, MFA. So I'll be sharing all this for us. So I want to thank everyone for the section. So if you have any question, you can just ask. So let me just show us terms of use. So if you want to configure terms of use, I don't have any terms of use here. But if I only just have one here. If I click on it now, let me see. So this is terms of use, require users to expand the terms of use on. So expiring. So you can create if you want to create. So you can ask your question. If you have any question, we are done with the section. So you can upload the PDF containing what you want the users to see. So you can just do it. So it's not difficult to configure. You can require user consent on every device. So you can, like I made mention the other time, you can use it to require user consent. If you turn it on, you can require user to expand the terms of use if you like, depending. So that's just it. You can also create from templates. Yeah. So go ahead, Uchechukwu. I think that's the last question we'll take because this is exactly 6 o'clock. So we have 2 people raising their hands. So Uchechukwu, you are number 1. So ask your question.
Okay, sir. Sorry, sir. Good evening. Please, sir, my question is, like, if there, after setting up a policy, maybe during the after setting up a policy, you come to find out that maybe there's an error you made. Is there any room for you to go back and still review the policy?
Yes, there's a room. So maybe, for instance, the policy I created for maybe this, maybe Naija security policy, once you select it, you can always come and edit it. If you are not cool with the conditions, you can come to the conditions and remove it. Maybe I want to add low. You can always add it. So you can always edit it if you have the right. It's not everybody that have the right to edit it. It's because this is my environment and I'm a global admin here. That's why. But if you are working in a structured environment, you know it's your manager or your team lead that will have access. So you have to reach out to the person that, okay, I want to do this, I want to do this. The person will now, okay, I made mistake. The person will help you. But if you don't have access, there's no way you can. But if you have access, why not? You can edit it.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Wasu, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening, sir. And
Good evening,
thank
sir.
you so much for this insightful section.
Yeah,
Please,
thank you
I
too.
made a complaint about this chat box. Like all the links that you've dropped today, I don't have access to any of them because I can't. The chat box is gray out. I can't access anything that you are dropping on these things.
Okay, don't worry. I'm going to drop everything on the WhatsApp group, but we'll look into that. We'll look into that. Thank you. Thank you for that feedback. So Lovina, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Emmanuel, for the class. So it's very, I don't know if it's the best audio. So my question goes this way. After